Hi friends, welcome to episode 48. It's Sunday and there's yet another storm out there, Storm Dara or something or other. It's brought a load of rain and it's really windy. I know a lot of the Midlands has been really hit with heavy wind and it's pretty windy here. This place is rattling like an aircraft. Anyway, yesterday, because I couldn't do any painting, I did some more, yes, you guessed it, rubbing down the panels. But I also had a go at working on the wiring on the RT. It's probably about 80% done now. I did some checks on what I'd done previously, and that all seems to be perfectly fine. My brother has managed to get hold of the wood for the ceiling, so we just got to organise a couple of days to get that wood and start fitting the ceiling in. We're going to do a sort of a dry fit where we fit it into the bus and then we take it all back down again, then I'll paint it all and hopefully it won't be too bad. But there is still a lot of work to be doing on this, so when the weather is this bad outside, I can be getting on with a multitude of other little jobs. Sadly, they're not particularly exciting, but like anything, they have to be done. So, right, should we push on?
Right, before we do this, let's introduce you to Storm Dara, the second named storm in 14 days. So my plans really sort of went out the window. Unfortunately, it brought a lot of wind, as it was warned about, and a lot of rain. Now, there was a window of opportunity, according to the weather forecast, on Sunday, for it not to be dry, for it not to be raining, for it to be dry. And I thought, here's a spell. I can get the old spray gun out and do some spraying. Unfortunately, the weather forecast didn't turn out to be greatly accurate. And this, although looking somewhat dry, because this was done on Saturday, this is the situation on Saturday. I know this doesn't look very dramatic. It just looked like a tree flapping around in the wind. But it was really noisy in the barn, and it was chucking up a load of dust as well. So, it was not very good for oil paint drying to have sort of dust being flung everywhere. Anyway, let me introduce you to the imagery from a little small camera that I bought. This is one of those things that cyclists have on the top of their helmet. So I was reviewing some of the footage with the iPhone that I used to film this, and unfortunately it really, although it's quite small, it struggles in little confined spaces to get any decent imagery. So I bought this tiny little camera. The quality of the stuff is not as good, but it does get us into some of the corners that I wouldn't have been able to get the iPhone in to film. So anyway, let's kick off with Saturday morning. Right, you join me in my not so favourite chore, although I don't mind doing this because your mind can wander really, and it sort of puts up with the noise of the banging shed around you. Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm rubbing down the little cover that goes over the light switch at the back, the conductor's locker. You don't actually see it unless you poke your head up there and have a look. But anyway, this is that. I sprayed that last weekend, and it didn't come up too bad, apart from a couple of little nicks in the corner. So rub it down, give it a little bit of rubbing down, and that gets that one out of the way. I had hoped, as I said earlier on, to pop some paint on these as a second coat, but the weather really was going to play up, and I had to grab an opportunity on Sunday to quickly put some paint over this stuff. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. But anyway, in the front of the camera, just ahead of us, we can see the fog light. That's the back of the fog light there. And the other little piece that's covered in sort of that little plastic wrap, that's the headlight. And the reason it's in that plastic wrap is because it's already been sprayed. I've sprayed it green, and I don't want that to get too badly damaged. So so hence the reason why I've covered it up. So I need to do the inside of that. You can just see on the other side, just by the bucket there, is the remainder of that little switch box. And I was just actually playing on my mind, sitting at the back of the shed just by RM1069. You can see my shoes. If any of you ever wonder, you think, blimey, does he go around like that all the time? No, I don't. The clothes I wear up the barn, and I don't know if I've said this before, I'll do this quickly. The clothes I wear up the barn are my really old, worn out clothes. And the reason is on as an example on Sunday, although I didn't film it. I did actually do a little bit of painting. I'll come to that in a minute. And I managed to get paint all over my sleeve, all over my old pullover. And that's the reason why I go up there in old clothes. But as a little story, the girlfriend of mine years back in the 1990s, I think early 1990s, she used to buy me clothes. And I used to go up to the barn. And yeah, you can guess what the inevitable would be. I get covered in oil, get covered in paint, get covered in rubbish. And then obviously the things just ruin the clothing that she'd bought me, and then I had to hide them. Sort of, she used to go, "Where's that shirt I bought you? Where's that woolly pulley I bought you?" But anyway, so now if she ever watches these, she knows what happened to them. So anyway, right. So let's move on with some other stuff. We'll get away from this now. Put that all to one side, and let's get on with some other gear. Right. So having rubbed some panels down, now time to move on to the electrical work. This is the scene outside when it started to really hack down with rain. So right, let's have a little flick to the interior of the bus. And what we'll do is we'll use that B camera that I bought. So I do apologise for the quality of some of the imagery because it's not as good as the iPhone, but it gets the point. Right, this is the inside of the RT now. This is the off side of the bus. And what I'm doing here is I'm removing all the light fittings and I'm putting the new wires in. The old wires, of which I'm not entirely sure if those two, no, they're new wires. They're the other two that are hanging down. So yeah, so I've pulled all the old wires out. And the only two wires that you can see, you see two wires just running across the top there. That's for the that's for the bell push. At the back by the conductor's area. Everything else, all the side lights, the trafficators, everything else goes down the near side. So the only wires that run down this side are the bell push wires for the back of the bus and the lighting. So that's what I'm doing now. I was really sort of hopeful on Saturday that having done all this work on the lighting, that I was going to be able to get the lighting working, at least do a test on it, but sadly it wasn't to be. It all went a little bit pear, unfortunately. But anyway, maybe more of that later on. So there we are. So that's fitting in the new wiring on the off side of the bus. I've done the near side, so both upper deck, the power supply to the upper deck's done, and the lower deck, all those light pans have all been rewired now. Right, this mess of wiring is the rear blind box, the destination, little one just at the bottom. Yep, a huge pile of wires. I know I've said this before. Years back, I tried to do one wire at a time, but the problem is they just get jammed in the conduit. The best way of doing it is bite the bullet and take every wire out except for one. So you pull every wire out, sling it in the bin. I do make notes as well before I get rid of them, which is why you notice in one of the other shots there's a sticky label on the window just to remind me of how many negatives I found in there. But anyway, so remove all the wiring, leave one in. The reason you leave one in is you use that as your draw wire. So you connect your new wires to the end of it, all of them, and then use that singular wire to pull the lot through. And that has worked so far. So now I've got to get the remainder of that wiring loom into this box. But there was a problem, and I'll come to that in a second. But let me just show you what I did in this box. Right, firstly, apologies for the poor image here. And I'm actually working partly under LED and also partly under torchlight. So this is removing the little block at the bottom here. Now, this block carries the cables for the rear blind box. You see that towel there, that rather thick-looking wire? That supplies the lower blind box, and then there's another set of wires that go off and supply the upper blind box. So the only way of getting to any of those wires is basically to remove that thing. And you can see the mess in the bottom of that gully just down there. If you can see that, it was absolutely horrid, and I'm going to need to deal with that in a minute. Right, so after removing all those wires, this is what I was left with. Yeah, pretty grim. Lots of flaking paint. This is not an easy spot to rub down, to be honest with you. It's really tough. But it was full of dust and loose paint and all sorts of other bits and pieces in there. So the first thing I did was to grab the vacuum cleaner, vacuum it out as best as possible, then stick the airline in there. And the amount of crud that came out of this was unbelievable. Really loads of it. I mean, you could actually at one point pick it up with your hand and just sort of put it in the bin. But anyway, several attempts with the vacuum cleaner and the airline. Eventually I managed to get most of it out, but as soon as I got my pot of paint out and started painting in here, having rubbed it down a little bit, the crud came back. I don't know, it's just one of those things. But anyway, that's the inside of the box. You notice I've got that one singular wire there. That's one of those cloth coloured wires. That's going to be my draw wire to bring the loom through. But there is a problem because I've got a bit of a gap that I'm going to need to resolve later on. So I'll move that on to Sunday, and I'll have a quick chat about that on the Sunday bit of this episode. Right, earlier on I showed you this block when it was in situ inside the bus. Yep, there we are. That big thick cable is the one for the light bulbs on the rear destination. And then there's a whole host of other cables that go in the top. So the best thing to do, obviously, to access that, because no way you can access it when it's in the bus, is actually to remove it and leave it loose. So it'll be loose for the time being. But I do need to replace that little bit of wire. Right, this is the remanufacture of that largish cable to supply the rear blind box. Not particularly exciting, I happen to add, but there we go. But it has to be done. So, and as you know, I'm replacing as much of the wiring as I possibly can. But I'm going to leave the heritage wiring, I like to call it heritage, in the actual blind box themselves. But this is one that connects onto that. So, yeah, little bit done there. Right, continuing with the rewire, this is the side blind box. I painted this box probably about a year and a bit ago. It's one of the first jobs that I did. I got the old pot of paint out, tidied it up, and there you are. Anyway, that's got heritage wiring in it. I like to call it heritage wiring. It's that old cloth coloured stuff. But if you have a look on the left of shot, you'll see the wires that go off to the three other little bulb holders. I'm going to leave that in situ because I actually quite like it. But this bit that you can see I've disconnected, this bit's got to come out. And by the end of Saturday night, I'd managed to remove all of that and then replace it with new cabling. And this was the end result. The thing working. Yeah, I'm really quite pleased with that. And I went home, that was the last job I did on Saturday night, and I went home really confident for Sunday. Unfortunately, it was all going to go a bit Pete Tong on Sunday. Right, it's fair to say I woke up really early on Sunday, in fact 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was really enthused to get down the barn and to get back on with this. Having got these blind lights working, my hope was I was going to be able to test the saloon lighting because I've wired it up. It's all ready to go. But as you can see in this picture, here's part on the left-hand side of the shot. Here's part of the main loom that's coming through from the cab area. And I need to do a connection across that sort of area on the right there for the new wires. However, there's a bit of a problem. There's a gap. Now, it's not really I'd say a big problem, but it's work that I've got to tackle before Daryl and I, that's my brother, get up there and start to put the ceiling back in. And this is what I noticed. Right, this is the area just over the platform at the extreme edge, as it were, just underneath the lover's seat, as they like to nickname them. That's wood. And it's clearly completely cream crackered. I'm going to have to replace it. Now, you might think, well, that's not surely a problem because you can actually see the conduit in there. But if you look carefully, the conduit is actually connected to that manky old wood. So, yeah, I could work around it for the time being, perhaps, but we're going to need to remake that. And I really want to remake that now while the conduit is like that, because obviously if I can take the conduit out with no wires in it, then we can get access to that wood and then replace it. So that meant that my plans for Sunday really derailed. There you go. I mean, and the storm was raging outside, so I couldn't really get on with some of the other projects that I wanted to do because it was so damp, wet and cold. Right, well, luckily I've still got a few jobs I can be getting on with, including this, the platform area. A couple of weekends back, I'd applied some paint stripper to the area around the staircase, and I removed that handle as well, or sort of pushed it back anyway. It used to have Rexine on it because I found bits of Rexine on there. That'd be fiddly to replace that Rexine, but yeah, so I'm going to do what London Transport did and just simply paint it brown. Now I do need to do this as well, because if I want to put that battery crate back in, those little holes that you see there hold the battery crate in place. I've got a couple actually on the right hand side. You see two, there should be four there. The other two seem to be hidden, so I need to find out where they went. But anyway, nonetheless, that was a little job to do. So here we go, rubbing this down. Right, so I'm back on filming this on my B camera. See all those cables hanging down in the back there? They're some of the original ones, in fact, that I've been cutting out. So anyway, right, well, that's about it, really. Sunday went home really deflated, didn't feel I got a lot done, but anyway, the groundwork's there. My brother and I are going to try and sort 4 consecutive days out to put that ceiling in, so I can look forward to that now. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to doing the next one, and as usual, YouTube will recommend some more for you to watch.